Hi everybody, welcome to episode 30 of Satellite 664. I'm one of your co-hosts, Kaz Tagyan, and as always I'm joined by Steve Loopy Newhouse and Mr. Paul Lindop, and today we've got the pleasure of, once again, for the third time no less, being joined by Mr. Keith Wilfort, who's got a big smile on his face. Congratulations. Congratulations, Keith, on the 2-0 win to Arsenal. Well deserved.
Yeah, definitely. Sets us up nice for the Bean Dippers next week.
You've got to explain what that is now.
What the Big Dippers?
No, it's Liverpool.
There's an old song goes back to the 70s regarding Liverpool, and it goes like this: in your Liverpool slums, you look in a dustbin for something to eat, you find a dead cat and you think it's a treat in your Liverpool slums. And ever since then, Liverpool being referred to as the Bean Dippers.
Is that going to be an away game or is that at home?
No, they're at home, yeah.
Oh, it's a home game. So you're hopeful? Or?
Yeah.
Always hopeful, but they're a good side, Liverpool, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if we play like we can play, then we've got a chance, but my money's on a draw.
Oh, okay. Where's Liverpool on the table now?
Second.
Loopy, where's West Ham at the moment?
West Ham are
fifth, but we're now sixth.
I've got 6 far down in the table, so I don't know.
6 is pretty good. Yeah.
It was stolen.
Sorry?
Yeah.
5th place was stolen.
By whom?
Arsenal.
Oh, us.
No, we're 4th, mate. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Mind you, you've also got 3 games in hand over the hand.
You got to blame Cristiano Ronaldo as well.
Another fucking hat-trick.
Yeah, but our 3 games in hand are Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea. So there you go.
You've got to win them. You've got to win them now.
Well, yeah. I think it's a good chance, especially against Spurs.
Oh yeah.
I don't follow the competition all that closely. Where's Loopy? Where's my team? Where's Villa?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, they're way down.
They're way
about 9th or 10th, aren't they?
Okay.
A long way away.
All right. Look, been a while since we've seen everyone. So good to be back doing the show. Loopy, do you want to kick it off? Do you want to kick the conversation off, please? We've had a sad event in the world, in the Iron Maiden family.
It's a very sad event. On the 9th of February, we lost one of our main men, Vic Vella. He was regarded as crew boss back in the early days when I first started. He was the guy that put Green Goddess together. All very, very sad, but just as sad, 2 days later, Big John Hart followed him. I didn't actually find out. I mean, I knew that John was about sort of 70-ish, but I didn't actually find out until the funeral last Tuesday. Life's a blur. Vic was 85, 20 years older than me, and it was like, what was he doing? Doing what he was doing with us. But I do have one story, and I don't know if I mentioned it in the book. We were in a bed and breakfast, and Dave Light's got a piece of chain from somewhere, and he put it in Vic's bed, and then he hid under his bed, and I was waiting outside the bedroom door. So Pete's in bed, Vic gets into bed, puts out the light, and he goes, "Pete, switch the light on. There's a snake in my bed." To the point where Davey Lights under the bed starts howling with laughter. But Pete said when he switched the light on, the look on Vic's face, he said he'd never ever seen Vic as shit scared as he was. But yeah,
Was this in the Goddess?
yeah.
Was this in the Goddess, Loopy?
No, this is a B&B. It's
Awesome.
somewhere in the country. Yeah. But yeah, it was just sort of pranks we used to get up to.
Yeah.
Bless Vic.
Yeah, it's quite sad. We were trying to, at one stage, I think 2 years ago, get Big John Hart on the show because he was writing a book. He wanted to promote the book, but the book wasn't ready, and his people kind of wanted to wait a little bit. So it's.
I understand the book still isn't complete.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah, apparently his family are finishing it off, and they're going to publish it next year.
Yeah, so that was simply a case of circumstances not matching, aims. So
it just staggered me that within 2 days of each other.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, wasn't me.
Someone just hear a horn?
Yeah.
Who blew a horn?
I got an alert on my phone.
Loopy, you normally have some
okay.
strange things happen outside your window. Would someone just blow a horn outside your window?
Oh,
Hey, what?
Hey?
who are you talking to?
No,
Who are you talking to?
Loopy. There's always something weird outside his window.
I can't see that. All I can see out there is the reflection of the light bulb above me.
All right, look, let's just get to the topic of the day. Viewers are probably thinking, what the hell are these guys on about? Intriguing era of the band we're going to talk about today, and that's the 1992-93 era, the Fear of the Dark era, and it's intriguing for a number of reasons. I've said before, I personally consider this the very last page of the very last chapter of the classic era of the band. And that's for a number of reasons. I mean, we had a number one album. We had, a magnificent, triumphant headlining at Donington for the second time. And all this was in the climate of the grunge era, where metal was in decline. A lot of the bands that were quite big in the 80s had either disappeared or just weren't productive anymore. Yet Maiden, had sold out shows, sold out tour, number one album, and headlining huge shows, which I think is makes that whole era. I think the very last bit of that classic album. I mean, Keith, do you agree with that or disagree with that? And the reason I've sort of put it up for debate is this is also a much maligned era of the band. There's many fans that don't like this album. They don't like this era. They say that it all ended with Seventh Son. And as someone that was there, someone very much in a sanctum, I'm really interested in what your opinion is of this era. Was it a decline? Was it the end of the classic era? What do you think?
Well, no, I wouldn't put it so much as a decline. I'd put it more as a quantum shift in the direction. I mean, in the direction of the music, how it sort of got more serious, and it sort of started to deal more with real life issues and the fantasy aspect. So I think a lot of the fans, obviously, including me, we were all into the fantasy aspect and the sci-fi aspect, and so the material that made up Fear of the Dark was just like a completely quantum shift. But then again, he's like, unknown to many of us, the tensions were building within the band. Plus the fact it was sort of like the beginning at the end of Steve Harris's marriage and stuff. So there, amongst the band, there was a lot more negativity than previously.
Keith, was the band, was that tension there in 1990 and 91 for No Prayer, or did it really start to appear in 92?
No, it'd probably been there. It'd probably been there since 1990.
Wow.
The change, not from a negative point of view, but it was a big change musically with Adrian leaving and Yannick coming in. And although there was, no one was sort of like against Yannick or whatever, but it was just an adjustment, a big adjustment to make. It would be when when you get a new guitarist in or something like that. It was a big change, and also as well from Bruce's point of view, he just done his solo tour, the solo album, so he was like getting more of a taste of actually running his own show rather than being part of the band. He felt in some ways that he'd gone as far as he could go with Iron Maiden.
That's right.
And
yeah.
for the rest, if he stayed, he'd just be doing the same thing over and over again with no creative expansion or anything.
Yeah.
So he felt a little stifled.
Yeah, I think Steve Harris has been quoted as expressing some angst after Bruce came back from the solo tour of 1990. Is he still going to have that enthusiasm for
Exactly, yeah.
Yep. So,
I mean, basically, as you know, it's always been with Steve. You're either 100% Maiden or you're not.
That's right. Now, look, it's true. Look, you've actually raised some really good points. I think what sets Fear of the Dark apart from the other albums is you didn't have that escapism anymore. You didn't have that fantasy anymore. There was none of that swashbuckling abandon in the songs that you saw on, the earlier albums. This was dealing with real life issues, and I'm going to go through a few of these. And I know, Paul, I think you might have some points here as well.
Yeah.
Go on, mate.
I think they started first touch on the social aspects on No Prayer, didn't they? You could say that was like Holy Smoke and Public Enemy #1.
Yeah.
As examples of two songs where they were more social than what had been done before. They were having a poke at the Pray for TV thing, weren't they, in America? People paying money to these evangelists to watch them, and whatever. And Public Enemy #1, I think, was more of a social thing on the drug scene. Is it? Is that am I right there or something? But it took off.
Yeah,
more
I mean,
Fear of
the
the
thing.
Dark.
Yeah, because like with the Holy Smoke, it was like just before that, the Tammy and Jim Becker thing had come out in the open and stuff. So of course, once the band, basically the band were reacting to contemporary news. Same with Mother Russia.
Exactly.
The wall went down, and so they, that was heavily in the news. And unfortunately, the Scorpions just beat them to the punch with Winds of Change.
Winds of Change, yeah. But I think Fear of the Dark has probably got, to me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6. I might be wrong, but
let's go through.
I would say Be Quick or Be Dead. Fear is the Key.
Yeah.
Wasted Love.
Yes.
Afraid to Shoot Strangers.
Yeah.
Childhood's End.
Yes.
Weekend Warrior.
I would even add Judas Be My Guide. So out of 12 songs, we've got 7 songs. The majority of the album is quite serious. I mean, Be Quick or Be Dead. Even the cover of that illustration that Derek did. I mean, Eddie's strangling Robert Maxwell, who, for those who don't know, is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's associate. So they're now dealing with that sort of banking corruption, that fraud.
It was the pension scam, wasn't it?
That's right, correct.
All the pension money out of the companies that he owned,
Correct.
And then committing suicide off a boat.
Yes, that's right.
And didn't have to face the music, did he? His sons had to take the rap for it, but there you go.
Yeah, spot on. And then, Weekend Warriors, a social commentary about, football hooligans.
Football hooligans.
Yeah, I mean, that came in...
Rife in the 70s. The Weekend Warrior, to me, is more about Keith would know, Luke, in the 70s and 80s, London was rife with football hooliganism. Every top flight team, they had their what they call firms, and they would meet up before or after a match and just, go hell for leather with each other. Yeah. And it was, you're talking, West Ham, Arsenal, Chelsea, Millwall, Tottenham.
Is it still a problem in the UK, Paul?
I think it is underground, but not as prevalent as it was in the 70s and 80s. It was rife then, literally
Exactly.
rife.
It's more organised now.
Yeah, well, it is, yeah. With social media and everything else now, it's the organisation of these guys. You don't hear about it as much on the news now, where it was big news in them days, isn't it? Yeah, big news.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting the way the song ends. Basically, the lyrics say, what are you going to do on Monday? When sort of the game's over, the weekend's over. It's trying to get into the mind of the mindset of some of these guys.
There was a few films made in the late 80s and then into the 90s that sort of not glorified the football hooligan, but tried to sort of say, well, this is what these guys do on a weekend, and on a Monday they go back to being an estate agent or an accountant or this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? That's what they did. That's what they did. It's like me and you going down the pub for a game of darts or a game of pool, but these guys went to football for a fight. That's what they did. But
and it's probably equally applicable to the international games as well. I mean, we all remember sort of Germany, Holland. The fans sort of before and after the game, and even some of the sort of most of the travelling England fans were quite well behaved, but there was always a little element, weren't there?
Yeah.
England and Ireland.
Yeah, they got banned. I remember that. In Ireland, didn't they get banned abandoned the game after 20 minutes in the late 90s? Yeah.
And this is one of those songs that really a lot of fans don't like, because it's the style, like you said, Keith, before, the style change. There's very much an AC/DC type vibe to it. I don't understand the hate for it. I actually really like this song for a number of reasons. Just shows Maiden's versatility, I suppose. But now, Wasting Love is an interesting one. It's a really interesting one because, and my personal opinion, I'd be interested in your views. This was probably an extension of Bruce's solo foray because he started to become very introspective, very much, exposing himself, so to speak, sort of emotionally and personally. I mean, we got a real insight into what his frailties and his weaknesses. I think that was a first for a song on a Maiden album.
Definitely, yeah.
And go on.
Not one of my favourites, no.
Yeah, why is that? I love this song.
It was, when I saw them live, it was when they played it. It was the song I went to the toilet. I went to the toilet when they played that song live. It's not one. It's just one I don't like. I don't know. It's personal opinion, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is. Whereas
I just couldn't get on with it. No, I don't know why. It's just. I'm not saying it's a bad song, but it just wasn't. Literally,
It wasn't. It was incongruous. It seemed out of place.
Are you surprised, Keith? Were you surprised that Steve sort of let a song like that get on a Maiden album? Or
no, not really. Not really. No, because at the time, I said the band were making this sort of culture shift from the modern fantasy to the this is in the headlines. Let's spread the word. So the fact that it was sort of like a behind the scenes thing that did the AIDS epidemic and stuff that was going on. From that point of view, it sort of fitted in more. Context-wise, it fitted in more, but musically, it didn't. It stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it did.
Do you think it would have been better being on Bruce's solo album?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think it would have been a lot better as a solo track than Maiden track.
It's very reminiscent of Tears of the Dragon off his Balls to Picasso album. It's a very similar. I don't know. The guitar work's similar. The song structure's quite similar. But so Paul, I've got Actually, you and I are even now because I don't like the Time Machine on the new album. So the score's
Yeah, right.
one. There's a one or draw
yeah,
now, But no. Look, my live experience of this song was very different. I was sort of pushed up against the monitors when I saw this show, and when Bruce sang "Wasting Love," I've never seen a vocalist ever put so much pain and emotion into singing the song. It was very poignant. It was it was. I'd never seen him like that before.
Yeah. It's a bad song. I remember. I'm sure. Now I'm digressing a bit. I'm sure they played it when I saw them as the Noddy Donkeys at Norwich on the warm-up show, and obviously in a small pub, the sound in there was superb. It was great. But when I saw them play it at Donington, now I've got to check now. I'm going to check my set list because I'm sure they did it. They did it in '93 on the '93 show. It was literally.
Yeah, they did.
Okay, right, I'm going to the toilet now. But that's me. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Look, we've all got songs we don't like, and we've got songs that we love, and that's again, it's different fans have different opinions, but again, a song that a lot of people don't like. And following on from that theme, I think songs like "Childhood's End," "Fear Is the Key," "Afraid to Shoot Strangers," which came in the wake of the Gulf War a year before, "Judas Be My God." I mean, these songs, they presented a very threatening, dark world. The reality of what the early 90s was going on in the early 90s. And, we'd all been used to Maiden, being I suppose, a place to go to forget about that stuff. I mean, all the preceding albums were about that. And don't forget, this came pretty much 3-4 years after Seventh Son. So, which was the ultimate fantasy album, right? So you've got the triumph of Donington '88, you've got the triumph of the Seventh Son album, you've got this band that kind of took you to a different world, and with this album they were bringing you back to the 6 o'clock news. And I think a lot of fans probably, in the wake of the triumph of 1988, were all of a sudden confronted with the ugly reality of day-to-day living, and that's not. I don't. In my opinion, I think that's why the album's maligned, because.
Yeah, I didn't see it that way at all.
You didn't?
More of a progression. No. I saw it more of a progression. I didn't really think about those social aspects of those songs until years later. To me, it was just a new Iron Maiden album and a new Iron Maiden song. Mm. Obviously.
Did you like the album, Paul, when you first heard it?
Yeah, I did. Every album bar one on first listen, I thought I liked. Yeah.
What was the one you didn't like?
Virtue 11.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you've.
But I remember Keith backed me up on this when they did I'm going on again now. '95 at the Astoria, they did the Fan Club convention. And it was before the X Factor came out, and they actually played the album for us over the PA, the whole album. And I thought, Christ, this is good. Like this, I really like it. And now it's in my bottom two. But on first hearing, I really liked it. But there you go. But we're going back to 92.
Where do you put Fear of the Dark then in that list? Is it sort of more higher up on the list? Is it mid of the table?
A little bit further higher up than the X Factor, but not too much.
So it's bottom of the table.
Bottom five.
Bottom five.
But again, it's a personal opinion, isn't it? Some people love it as a whole album. Some people love the X Factor. Some people love Virtue 11. It's personal opinion. It's what you like. It's what But I'm not going to tell anybody you've got to like this. It's down to you to make your opinion, what you like and what you don't like. So,
Keith, what was your first? I mean, obviously, you've told us your first impression was this is a quantum sort of shift. Musically, what was your first impression hearing it back then?
Well, quite honestly, one thing you have to remember at that time is that because of my position, I hear the albums. By the time the album was actually physically released, I was sick of the bloody thing. Because, well, you think doing stuff where I'd have to go down to the studio and hear them rehearsing tracks and what have you, and then Steve would say, "Oh, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?" So by the time the album was actually finished and released, I was like, "Oh, bloody hell, I'm so sick of this." but no, yeah, I mean musically, they were trying, they were trying new stuff.
Mm.
So, like Paul says, to me, it wasn't so much sort of like shifting emphasis. It was progressing, moving on to the next stage. It's like there's no way they could have carried on as brilliant as it is. I mean, it's my favourite album. There's no way they could have kept doing Seven Sons for the next 20 years.
No,
they wouldn't have been around for the next 20 years.
No, and very good point, Keith. And let's not forget when this album came out. The rest of the world was into. I mean, Nirvana were big, and all these, these sort of industrial Seattle bands that just very, very sort of plain, stripped down sound. Which
it started the emergence, was it, of people like Pearl Jam?
Nine Inch Nails,
Soundgarden. 9 Inch Nails. I actually saw them the year before, and they were superb. But there you go. I saw them in '91 supporting Guns N' Roses at Wembley Stadium, and they were brilliant.
Wow.
Ultimately, Maiden have seen these fads off. It started with punk.
Yeah, they have.
And then in the 90s, you had grunge.
Yeah.
Maiden's still here. Where are these bands now?
Exactly.
But that's with most of the metal bands. I mean, look, you can't be at the top forever. I mean, all bands with longevity tend to have a dip at some point. I mean, a 40-year career, and it's happened with all of them, and they've all resurrected, and in brilliant fashion, probably been bigger than ever. I mean, we know Maiden's bigger than they ever were back in the day. So. Keith, do you think, in your opinion, and again, it's all about opinion, do you reckon the album was 3 or 4 tracks too long? Because I've always thought, did the album suffer as far as being embraced by the fans because it was a bit too long? Because don't forget, every other album prior to that, from I think Peace of Mind onwards, had 8 songs. Pretty much 8 songs. This had 12.
Yeah, I mean, initially, but then again, that's the way the business was moving. Mm. Albums were turning into sort of like masterworks rather than just a collection of songs.
Well, not only that, but when going back to the early days, when you had an album which was vinyl, which was literally 45 minutes a side, whereas
that's right, yeah,
the whole 80.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
so, but no, I mean, the only thing, I can understand where some people think it's too long, because there were a couple of weaker tracks on there.
Mm.
So, I mean, if all the tracks had been up to like their full standard, people would have people don't complain about Senjutsu being too long. Because it's mostly all good music. But as I said on Fear of the Dark, I think it's because for the first time, they were putting out such a long album that there were a couple of tracks that under the previous era wouldn't have made it on the album.
Not at all. What I do really like about this album is I get the feeling, and again, Keith, I'd be really interested for you to comment on this. Yannick Gers was actually unleashed. It was for the first time he was let loose, and musically he just did. He is all over this album. Whereas on No Prayer for the Dying, I felt he was sort of holding back a bit. Whereas he's writing songs on this album, and he's playing. I actually think some of his finest playing is on this album because it was his first real album. He just features brilliantly, in my opinion, anyway.
I agree with you because, like, with Fear of the Dark, not Fear of the Dark, with No Prayer, literally only been in the band a few months actively, so he was still finding his feet. He was in a lot of ways, he was basically a session musician brought in.
Yeah, he was.
But then after that, once he got to know everybody, working with everybody on the next album, he's like fully fledged member of Iron Maiden, so he could contribute. But on No Prayer, he was like still finding his feet.
I want to look. Let's go on to whilst we're on it with guitarists. Just want to ask. Adrian Smith has said that when he joined the band on stage at Donington, he felt a real emptiness and sadness, like he was sort of missing out. Do you in your opinion, and look, feel free not to comment if you don't want to. In your opinion, do you think there was a hint of regret for his decision to leave?
Possibly, yeah, because his solo career hadn't taken off as well as it hoped. I mean, Silver and Gold was sort of like wasn't much of a commercial success at all. And then, and of course, with Maiden, everything was like taken care of and stuff. It's just turn up, play, and stuff. But so when he got back up on stage with Donington, he was back in that comfort zone for a minute. It's a bit like sort of going home. It was almost like going home.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'd say sort of thought, well, maybe things aren't quite so green or on the other side.
And I don't know if it's because we were younger or the years must have seemed a lot longer back then. But when we think about it, it was only 7 years later that he'd actually be back. Less than 7 years later. And he'd actually be back with them. So, time is it's a strange thing. All right, let's talk about the artwork. This was a vastly different shift because they effectively Derek Riggs did the Be Quick or Be Dead artwork, but for the album artwork they went to Melvin Grant. Was there a falling out with Riggs, or did they just not like what he produced? Because Rasmus has shown the original Through the Dark artwork on this show before, and is a bit different to what we got. But we've gone from a humanoid, sort of fun type of character to basically a tree figure.
Basically, from the vibe at the time, it's because the content of the album was challenging and stuff. Is they wanted to shift it on the artwork as well. They sort of like wanted to make that break on the artwork and try and bring the artwork into the 1990s.
Yeah.
And also at the time, Derek wasn't happy because he was fed up with being on an assembly line, and it was a case of like their stuff he'd come up with. He'd work 2 or 3 months on a piece of artwork, and then they turn around and say, "Oh no, that's not what we wanted. Can you do this? And by the way, you've got 2 weeks to do it." So he thought he was Derek and Maiden's relationship with each other was really sort of rocky. In the case of like Derek felt he was on assembly line. Rod and Steve were sort of like, well, hang on, maybe he's not putting 100% into it or what, and as we're in the 90s, we should try and update Eddie rather than keep.
I suppose when you've been doing something for so long, people do get, I won't say stale, but I mean, if you've been in any workplace for too long or for so long, as tensions do arise. I mean, it's just a natural, organic thing. It's not so much. Paul, were you surprised when you saw the artwork the first time?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I actually, didn't realise it wasn't Derek until I opened the album up and read the sleeve notes. I just assumed it was a Derek Riggs thing. But, quite surprised that it wasn't. But I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of realised when there was a disparity between Be Quick or Be Dead artwork and the cover artwork. I thought, hang on a tick. We've got Eddie back in jeans and t-shirts, and then he's a stick figure on. And then that's when I looked at the fine print and thought it was Melvin Grant. So that's sort of the artwork. Donington. Now, you guys were all three of you at Donington '92.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was.
I was there.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and you guys were all at Donington '88. Look, as somebody that wasn't at Donington '92, I'm really quite interested to see your impressions of the night, and how it compared to 4 years before. Because once again, I don't know if this is just sort of media sound bites for the sake of it, but the band have said that they felt their performance was stronger because they weren't as nervous, and they felt that the event was run a bit better. So as Paul as a fan and Keith as somebody who was there on the inside, can you speak about your impressions of that festival, that show?
To be honest, I think '88, their performance for me, '88 was better. I think it was that nervous energy that gave them that edge that night. But yeah, I can understand what people say or the band say that they think '92 because they were excellent. They had to be because Skid Row was superb. Skid Row were on before them. They were brilliant, and yeah, Maiden had to sort of up it and come out all guns firing, and they did. Yeah, I actually thought it was a really good lineup the whole day. To be honest, I thought it was a better lineup than '88. But I think Maiden's performance in '88 was better than '92. But '92 was still really, really good.
So the lineup in '92 was Wasp, Skid Row, Thunder,
Slayer.
Yeah, and '88 was Kiss, Guns N' Roses, David Lee Roth, Megadeth,
and Halloween.
I actually like the '88 lineup a bit. No,
the Halloween a bit. David Lee Roth. Can't stand the guy.
Well, I do agree with you.
Like him straight away. That was another toilet breakup.
I do agree with you that Skid Row are a hell of a live band. I mean,
they were really good that day. They were super. Yeah. I was a Skid Row fan as well.
Yeah, so, me too. And Slave to the Grind, incredible album.
Great album.
Keith, what was your feel for '92? The Donington '92.
Yeah, I mean, actual performance-wise, I agree with Paul. Is 92 was a good performance, but 88 sort of, I think as Paul said, like the nervous energy and stuff built up, and it seemed they were more up for it in '88 than they were in '92. '92 it's more a case of, we've been there, done that. We'll put on a great show. But there wasn't that sort of like push for them to sort of really go crazy. It was all more more scheduled and everything, more choreographed. And the same behind the scenes. Sorry?
Was there a reason why Donington was the only UK show on that tour?
Yeah, basically he's They basically they put a lot into Fear of the Dark, which took a lot longer than it usually does and stuff, and also as well from the promoters' point of view, the promoters throughout Europe didn't think there would be a market for it because it's like
right. Okay. So
they the offers weren't coming in. The offers that were coming in weren't that great. So, and then once they were offered Donington, it was a case of like, we're going to put 100% into this. We're going to pour everything into it. And the amount of organisation that just from the Sanctuary's point of view, going into Donington compared to '92 compared to '88, it was just a lot more. It was more like a sort of everything had to be on schedule. And everything was more organised, whereas it was still, in '88, there was still like this sort of like make up as you go along a bit. Something happened, or whatever. But with Donington, it was all like clockwork. Everyone had to be in a certain place at a certain time. So it was more like, it was more regimented. And I think that made a bit of a difference to the band performance as well. Of like, there was no sort of spontaneity.
Right. Yeah.
Keith, I'm just really surprised. if it got a #1 album, why would promoters think there's no demand for a UK tour?
I
don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean that's the sort of thing you'd have to ask them. It's just basically, for some reason there was, I don't know what it was, whether but it just wasn't. The enthusiasm didn't seem there so much.
Yeah. And that's when I guess that was like Bruce's last tour. So Bruce. These are the performances that some of them in Europe were, witnessed to be quite glaringly obvious. I mean, Dickie Bell said it. Steve Harris has said it, that some of his performances were just not there.
Basically, in my opinion, it was a case of the big shows. Bruce was up for it, but the sort of more lower profile shows, he was holding himself back.
Yeah, some of those, you listen to the bootlegs of some of those shows, as you say, in smaller places in Italy, particularly, and France. You can barely hear him singing. There's just no oomph. There's no electricity in that performance.
Yeah, and also as well, it's like between Bruce and the rest of the band, there was sort of like a marked separation occurring. It's like about the only time Steve and Bruce talked to each other would be either about technical issues or to slag each other off. Basically, sort of that.
It was noticeable as well. In '93, Keith was there when I was at Birmingham, and we were at Birmingham NEC, and literally Bruce would turn up, do his stuff, and go, kind of thing. That's what I noticed at Birmingham, especially because all the bands, apart from Bruce, were there early backstage doing stuff. I remember Nico was filming something, and I remember chatting with Steve before the show about football and stuff, and that was a good, hour and a half before they were due on stage and whatever. And Bruce, I don't remember him being there then. And straight after the show, we were in hospitality because me and Keith were watching the football on the telly. And Bruce is gone. Literally gone.
I think it's documented he was the last to arrive and
the
first to go. That's quite
Definitely.
documented. Mick Wall.
I mean, he wouldn't even stay behind in change. He'd literally be, his stage costume in a bathrobe straight out into the car.
It's terrible. That atmosphere would be quite bad. So, all right. So, let's talk about the lead up to Raising Hell and I guess how that event came about to be. I mean, you guys were there.
Well, I mean, basically, it was an approach from Simon and his production company rather than a Maiden idea.
Oh, wow.
These people approached Rod and Steve and and John Jackson, the promoter and the agent, and sort of said, "Let's do this. Let's do. I've got this great idea for a TV show, and have the band on it." So really, the band, although the band were prominent, the band were really Simon's guests. So it was more like Simon's show than anything. But I mean, the band said, the band was sort of like, well, yeah, I mean, we'll get great TV exposure and everything, and it's probably going to be Bruce's last appearance. So that it was basically, from the band's point of view, it's a good idea because it hadn't really been done before, and secondly, it was a great promotion opportunity.
Yeah. Rather than being billed as Bruce's last ever performance.
Yeah.
It was sort of billed as that as well, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah. I mean, that was sort of like in case the Simon meets Iron Maiden bit didn't work out, the Bruce's last performance was sort of like put a few more thousand bums on seats and get more pay-per-view sales.
Can you speak to the, again, sort of similar theme to what we were talking about a few minutes ago? Can you speak to the atmosphere and vibe before and after that show? given that it was the last show for 7 years, although they didn't know that at the time. But
yeah, I mean, basically, it was just more of the same. I mean, the separation between Bruce and the band per se was even more announced. You know, Bruce literally just turned up to do his rehearsals and stuff, or do interviews and stuff, and he was gone. Whereas like the rest of the band hang around for a while and what have you. But it was, if anything, the separation was even more pronounced.
Yeah, it wasn't though at the show, the broadcast show on the Saturday. If you remember, you had to go off in the coach, didn't you, with the people back to London, didn't you? And me and you had a quick chat after the show. And you said like, this is where hospitality is, didn't you? So I went to hospitality after the show, and Bruce was there. He was actually in there. In the after show party. So was Adrian. Adrian was there as a guest. And all the band were there. And they stayed through, I left it, I remember leaving about 3 o'clock in the morning. And people were still there then. But Bruce was there. Well, I think on that final show, it was sort of, I think he knew he had to sort of stay around and could just shoot off straight away because it was farewell.
Yeah, I mean, the world's press was there, the TV, news cameras and everything were there, so it was like, there's no way you could really avoid it, even if you wanted to.
No,
but,
that's right.
With the worldwide TV audience and stuff, he was determined that he was going to go out on top, literally. He really pushed out all the stops. That was probably his best show for like a year.
Wow.
Yeah. It was weird because,
Sorry,
and I mean, another example is like the day before the show, on the rehearsal days and stuff. Like Steve, Dave, and the band, they were there all day. But as I said, you hardly saw Bruce on the rehearsal day. He literally just came up and did his bit and was gone. Whereas like the rest of the band
going back to the start of this conversation, when you said that they looked at it as okay, this is Bruce's last gig, so we could do this for the exposure. But who got to benefit? Because if Bruce is leaving and then they bring in somebody that's virtually unknown, I'm not saying Blaze was unknown, but I just don't understand why they thought they'd benefit from it.
Well, I mean, obviously doing a show like that, especially being on pay-per-view, it brought the band to a larger audience, and to a different audience than what they used to. So obviously, back catalogue record sales would go crazy.
Yeah. Because it was released on VHS as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was the video sales and everything. Plus, I assume repeat fees because it was shown several times.
Yeah, it was actually shown on. It's actually shown on BBC Two here as well. I think a week after. I think it was a week after they.
Yeah,
but it was an edited version.
Yeah, I mean the back catalogue sales after that went up.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I mean from a financial point of view, it made sense. But sort of. As you say, in fact, this Bruce's last show, everyone expected, it'd be something spectacular, or whatever.
Yeah, it was weird because I wasn't supposed to be going to that because it was, at the time, it was FC competition winners and people who won on the radio stations were the people to go. And obviously I entered the fan club competition and didn't win. So I had the ump a bit because I entered so many competitions to try and go to this show that I had the ump. So I have long hair, so I would have got my hair cut off. And when I had my hair cut off short. And then a certain person called Keith rings me up on the Wednesday, says, "What are you doing Friday night?"
Get me into
rehearsal. Yeah, rehearsal. Oh, cheers, mate.
Yeah, because obviously the competition winners was the show itself. They still needed an audience for the rehearsal.
Yeah. So they picked me up in a coach from Uxbridge, like to meet you at Uxbridge Station.
Yeah.
And I got on the coach, and it was you, Cod, Paul Green, and they looked at me and said, "What the bloody hell have you done to your hair?" I said, "Don't." And we went off to the rehearsal, and there can't have been more than 100 people in there that night for that rehearsal.
Yeah.
From memory, because I remember we had to wait outside in a holding area for about an hour before they let us in, and they sound checked with Sanctuary. I always remember standing listening to them sound checking the Sanctuary, and then they let us in, and Simon Drake was on. So if you're looking at the stage, he was on the left-hand side, Maiden straight in front of you, and like I said, there must have been about 100 people, but they did everything. Simon Drake did his full show, Maiden did a full show. But the Maiden show was all in one. There was no stoppages. It was literally bang. This is it. But Simon stuff was all done beforehand. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was the full dress rehearsal was going to be the go-to if something went wrong on the night.
On the night, yeah. On the live one, yeah. On the pay-per-view.
Oh.
But I also, obviously, because I wasn't supposed to be going, so I went the Friday night, and on the Saturday, I just drove up there and parked up. And Wally was there on security. And he looked at me and said, "Have you got a wristband to get in?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you better put one of these on there." And I remember walking around and seeing Keith, and you were doing all the coach. I think you were doing the FC winners on the coach and stuff like that. And I remember saying to you, "Oh, is there any t-shirts left?" And no, all sold out. I was like, bugger. Went in, watched the show, come out, saw Keith again. Right, he was going to back off, like I said earlier, on the coach with the winners, and he sort of directed me where to go for hospitality. So, like I said, I went in there and got out at 3 o'clock in the morning, which was nice.
As a fan, were you sad that night? Were you sad? Did you have a sense of loss and sadness?
No, not really. It was sort of... I thought it was a good show. I really did. I thought it was a really good show, good performance. But no, there wasn't any of that. It was sort of... No, it was a bit like when they got rid of Paul and brought Bruce in. You had to sort of get on with it, I suppose. But then Bruce had more of an effect with him incoming than I think Blaze did when he came in. And no not being detrimental to Blaze, he's a nice guy. But it was just that, I don't know. No, I wasn't sad at all, but it was just, it was so different, wasn't it? Did you feel that way as well, Keith, or did you actually feel a bit of sadness and melancholy that it was the end of the era, truly end of the era?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of sadness. It was a break-up of, one of the most powerful lineups a band have ever had. But then again, from a professional point of view, I was still going to be working with Bruce anyway.
Oh, okay.
With the solo stuff, because he was still managed by Sanctuary, so it wasn't a case of like, I wouldn't be working with him anymore, or whatever. So there was that. But also, though, because of the acrimony over the last 18 months, it's a case of like, they can't go on like this anyway. They've got, someone's got to go, and everyone, pretty much everyone knew it was going to, if anyone was going to go, it'd be Bruce, it would be Steve.
Of course.
So it was a case of like, it was all expected. So it was, it wasn't the actual part in the ways wasn't really an upset. It was sort of like, it's going to happen. And it is.
Was Yannick Gers almost like the Switzerland of the band, insofar as he kind of remained neutral because he was close friends with Bruce as well? Or did you observe basically that sort of disconnect with Yannick and Bruce as well?
No, not really. Once again, Yannick was still relatively new.
Uh-huh.
So, but he'd been around in the business long enough that he knew, he knew what the score was.
Yeah.
It's like, so from Yannick's case, okay, he was, he was friends with Bruce long before he got into Maiden. He'd be friends with Bruce long afterwards. So from Yannick's point of view, it's probably just a case of like, he was upset he wouldn't be working with Bruce anymore. but he wasn't. He didn't take sides.
Yeah.
They used to live down the same road, didn't they? In Chiswick.
Yeah. I mean, basically,
neighbours,
so basically, a case of when you're at work, when you work, your best friend, if your best friend gets fired, you still get, you still have to get on and do the job.
Yeah.
I remember the interviews in Kerrang at the time when it was all announced, and the vocal ones at the time were Steve and Nico, and Yannick and Dave were, didn't partake in any interviews, didn't say anything.
No.
They were literally, it was Steve and Nico that were the vocal ones. About Brooks leaving and doing this and doing that. But there you go.
I suppose I look at it from the lens of a fan, whereas this is business. It's work. It's business, and they just, like you said, you've said a couple of times, they just get on with it and proceed.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Good. Anything else you guys want to add? I think we've pretty much covered everything about the era.
We haven't touched on the Field of Darkness, the last Martin Birch album, have we?
Ah, yes, it was. It was, and hence the end of it.
Or why Keith said that he thought it was such a pain in the arse to be there for 48 hours.
Oh yeah, Raising Hell, yeah.
Oh yes, we didn't touch on.
Well, for one thing, it's the classic case of lovelies meet rock stars. They don't mix very well. I mean, because when doing a video, when doing a full-length video or TV show, you've got, there's the regime of, you've got gaffers, you've got the floor manager, you've got this, you've got that, telling you exactly what's doing that, and then you've got the sort of musician saying, well, why have I got to stand there? Or, the two cultures, although similar in entertainment.
Well, I think back to Top of the Pops. The first time Maiden did it, we had a guy standing in front of the stage, 2 feet away from the front of the stage, with a decibel counter saying it's too loud.
Yeah.
That's just like the BBC. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but carry on, Keith. Sorry.
Yeah, and of course, all the TV people are unionised, so it's like, sort of like, Bruce wants that monitor moved, but no, the road crew can't do it. The stage manager for the TV production has to do it. So there's a lot of sort of head clashing. And from my point of view, what really brought it to a head was number one is like I was sort of like doing regularly shuttling between the studio and Sanctuary. Oh, can you take this down? Or can you bring this back? Steve wants this. Can you do that? And so I was like practically doing it on the road like 12 hours a day, going backwards and forwards. And then what really pissed me off was I had to take a load of photos down to Steve to approve. Can't remember what it was for now. I don't know if it was for a program or something, or a magazine. But I had a whole like box of photos that I had to take down to show Steve, so he could pick out the ones he wanted. And Steve was down there, but all day. I was literally there all day waiting for Steve to approve these photos. And you don't go to Steve and say, "Hey, come on, stop what you're doing. I need these approved now." Blah blah blah. So I was down there for like 9 hours waiting for Steve to finally go through these photos. And then Rob turns up and goes, "Oh, what are you still doing now?" So I'm waiting for Steve to approve the photo. But you should have done 8 hours ago. You should have been back to the office. I said, "Well, don't tell me. Tell Steve. You two talk to each other. Don't bring me into this. I'm just doing what I'm told." Steve didn't want to do them then. You wanted them done then. You should have sorted it out with Steve. So it put me in a really embarrassing position, to say the least.
Were they the '93 tour photos? Because I remember being in your office when you were on Colonnade on Bishopsbridge Road.
Yeah.
And I was in your office with you one day, and you had a load of photos that had been brought in. And they were on a desk in white sheets, little ones in white sheets. And you were going through them, we were having a look at them. And I remember you saying then that these are all up for approval. So I was wondering whether it was all those lot, and they were from the '93 tour.
Yeah, well, it may well have been those. But I know there was a hell of a lot of them, and that was also on a deadline because I don't know that to go to America or that to be somewhere in a hurry. But as I said, that whole day you were like, I wanted throttle speed and I wanted punch rod on the. I wanted throttle speed and punch rod on the nose. Fortunately, I didn't. But as I said, the whole thing because of all it was just a mishmash of like it wasn't a case of anything go wrong. Anything that go wrong will go wrong. It's a case of any shitty job will be a shitty job. So it was like, it was hell of a day.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah.
And
it was to be honest, the shows that I went to Wembley on the Monday, Wembley Arena on the Monday, and the Thursday at the NEC, and the two Raging Hells. And every show I went to, I thought was really good. I really enjoyed them both. It wasn't a case of Bruce isn't performing or this. I thought he did on every show I went to. So
I guess
I enjoyed that.
I guess it goes back to what we were saying earlier. The high-profile, more prestigious shows, he went all out. I mean, same. I mean, I saw the tour October '92. It was the first time in 7 years they'd been here, and I mean, Bruce was on fire. It was just one of the best, probably one of the best shows I've ever seen of them that night. And this was supposedly a band that was going through transition. They were sharp, they were tight. Bruce was fantastic. So,
I like that. I really like that. Bruce is on fire, gets replaced by Blaze.
That's a whole. I tell you, the Blaze saga is a whole different story.
Oh yes. Oh, that's Well, we've had the man himself on.
Sorry.
We've had him on before. We've actually had him on. One of the earlier episodes. Yeah.
He's a nice guy. I met him at Twickenham 2008 after the show, and really nice guy. You sat in the bar, chat with him. Really nice guy. Yeah.
Met him in Sittard, a Maiden day in Sittard in Holland. Very, very quiet. Getting himself until he gets on stage, he totally changes.
Yeah.
And none of us knew that Sills at 6-7 years later, it would be the juggernaut would rejoin and be back. And what a great history! What an interesting, intriguing history. So I think we've covered most things we wanted to. Paul, have you got anything to add, mate?
No, I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, the only thing I've seen on it we said about Bruce was he said he'd already announced his plans to leave before the tour began.
That's right.
And he's actually stated that the concerts were extremely challenging. So
yeah, for obvious
why
reasons.
they were challenging, we don't know. But that's only for Bruce to answer, isn't it? So.
No, because that news came out in early '93, didn't it? That he was going to leave because I think he went to LA to record or to work on his solo album, and that's where he made the decision, and Rod flew out, and that's when he broke it to Rod first.
Yeah, the tour started in March.
That's right, because '92, I mean, nobody knew. It was just, and I don't think he'd even made the decision. Maybe deep down he might have, but anyway. Good, and that's it. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of that chapter, and we then move on. We're planned for the next episode. Keith, thank you so much, mate, for coming on again. We love it when you come on.
In TV terms, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. We love it when you come on, mate. It's always a great chat, and and until the next one, we thank you for watching. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye,
See you.